So for those of you who are now joining in, if you guys do have any questions at all in regards to branding, maybe some things that you guys want to get out of today's session, please post in the chat box. You guys won't have the ability to speak. I may change that, but as of right now, I won't have you guys speaking. And then that way we can make sure every question that you guys have regarding branding can be addressed. So we'll give it a few more minutes. I love how some of you guys are a bit early. So we'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started. Karen, I think you went off the video, but I'll get you back on as we're ready.
Here. No, I'm right here. I was just had stepped away for a second.
Oh, no problem.
I have something in my eyes. I was like, okay, I need to fix that. That's not a pretty look. That's not something I want to be.
No worries.
You know, when you get SPF in your eyes, when you put like, yep.
Oh, awful.
That is horrible. So we may be talking about that more than branding today.
And today's session is recorded for those of you if you might not be able to stay the whole way through. We will be recording, and for everyone who has joined in, I will make sure you guys get a copy of the recording.
Yay, I see a couple of my peeps, Alexis, just snooping through the attendee list. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I will excellent. So for those of you who don't know, because I know Karen has some people who've come in on her end. So my name is Rhea and I am from Agent Marketing Systems. So we're a marketing company located in Mississauga. We do websites for real estate agents, single property websites for agents, lead generation, social media, automated social media posts. Hi. We do quite a bit of different things over here, and one of the main things is training. So anyone who knows me from the real estate industry and knows Karen, we are huge on training. We want to make sure that real estate agents or real estate professionals, even if you're on the mortgage side, we want to make sure that you guys are as successful as possible and that you guys have all of the tools necessary to reach what you're trying to do in your business. With that said, I'll just show you guys a couple of different training sessions that Agent Marketing System is doing, and then we'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully by then everybody who's registered will be in. So let me just, give me 1 second. So I'm just gonna share a screen. So we do have quite a few different training sessions coming up. We have Jennifer Gimbury, who's an amazing corporate coach. She's gonna be doing a marketing boot camp that is next week. That will be at the Nexera Law Group office. And later on in October, she's gonna also be doing a business planning event. Again, I am absolutely a huge promoter of business planning. I don't really think that you can get where you want in your real estate business unless you actually plan for it. Otherwise, you're kind of working to a goal that doesn't really exist, or there's no clear path to do that. So business planning is huge. We're also going to be starting a Pathway to Mastery class, and I believe that will be in November. So if those of you who are trying to work by referral or unsure on really how to go about it, Brian Buffini's method is absolutely wonderful. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know. We are going to be doing a Smiling and Dialing webinar in middle of October, and that will be with Michael Samra of Prospecting Ninja, and you'll actually see him calling his online leads live. So this will give you a great way to figure out how to start the conversation, what to ask, how to deal with objections that you receive. And then I will be doing a 4-week class in November for real estate assistants. I used to be a real estate assistant, so I know all of the things that you guys should be doing, things that even your agent hasn't told you that you should be doing. So if you guys want an in-depth look on what a real estate assistant should be doing, go ahead and register for that as well. All right. I am going to stop sharing now. And Kiran, if you can go ahead and let everybody know who you are, that would be wonderful.
Who am I? Okay.
Who are you?
Who am I? I love it. So thank you so much, Rhea, first of all, for having me on today. I really appreciate the opportunity. I hope everybody can, first of all, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you good. So
okay, perfect. So Rhea and I actually go back, way back, when I first got my license. This is now 2012. I remember 2012, 2013 when I first met you. I was an agent at the office where Rhea was coaching agents and training agents. So she was one of the first people that I went to with like, what the fuck am I doing? Help me out. So that was great. Since then, I've actually, I've sold in the business. I partnered up with my previous business partner. We sold in Milton for a number of years together, and then I kind of ventured out into the coaching and training world because I have a teaching background. I used to be a teacher back in England, so I took that with me, those skill sets, along with what I learned in the business. And yeah, I've built a curriculum. I go from brokerage to brokerage. I work with teams just to kind of talk about some of the things that I've learned and have helped me a lot in the business, and that I'm helping a lot of the teams and agents with. So that's a little bit about me.
All right. Perfect. Okay. So I know that as a active real estate agent, branding was a huge topic of conversation. So that is what our session today will be about. I know you usually have a different take on things from a lot of the other coaches. So to me, I absolutely love the out-of-the-box thinking, because that to me really is going to help you propel your business to the next level, and you're not doing what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm. I love how you mentioned that, but we had this conversation yesterday. It was interesting because I was at an office in London yesterday doing a training session on psychology of sales. And we spoke about, a lot of the ways that I believe things can work and operate. And you're right. Like, I think we have there we go. Bill's on mute. There we go. So what I believe in first and foremost is simplifying things, because I feel that when I first got licensed and when I look at a lot of the systems that are out there and a lot of the training programs that are out there we go. A lot of the training programs that are out there, I feel that some of those programs actually hinder us in tapping into our inner genius, I like to call it. Mm-hmm. And I believe more so in empowerment and simplifying things. This business is not rocket science, nor should we really be restrained or restricted by rules and regulations of how to do certain things and scripts and manuals and things like that externally. When I feel that we all have the capability to tap inside with just the right, direction, we can be empowered to do things the right way in this business, is what I feel. Because I was very overwhelmed. So I was like, the first month of being licensed, I just absorbed all this information, and I was like, what is this? And I was like, shove it all aside. I remember Tarek put me at a Walmart kiosk at that time, the one that we had, the Remax kiosk. Yeah. I did my first 6 or 7 deals from that kiosk just by talking to people that were taking my grocery bags out. Right. So with branding, this is one of those things that I work with a lot of clients now, and I went through this process three times myself when I was selling real estate is this branding piece. Like, where do we begin? And I think that a lot of agents ask that question. It's a question that if you're part of any real estate groups, it's like a regular occurrence. People asking, where do I start? Or do I include my picture or not? Or do I brand for the team? Or do I brand for my name? Do I do a business? So there's a lot of questions that come up with regards to branding. So I'll just kind of want to start at the beginning. Is you have to really ask yourself two questions. Number one, what are your core values as an individual and as a business? Mm-hmm. And then you really have to ask yourself, who are you speaking to? Like, who are you creating this brand for? Who is your target audience? And I think we often miss that. We often skip that step. And the first thing we wonder about is, what should our logo look like? It's like,
yeah, definitely get that.
So, and I made that mistake too at the beginning of creating a brand, and had no idea what I was doing back then, but like creating a brand, quote unquote, which wasn't really a brand. It was just the brand identity, which is the visual representation of the brand, which is what the logo looks like. And the problem is, if you don't do your homework, which is the strategy piece to begin with, to understand, okay, where are my values? What am I communicating here? Why am I creating this brand? Who is this supposed to speak to? Then you're skipping a massive step, and your brand identity won't resonate with your target audience because you haven't aligned the two.
Okay, so let's take a step back, because I'm sure everyone's going to ask, in your mind, what is branding?
It's, in my mind, what branding is the definition, your perception that you want the market to have of you. It's how you want them to look at you, perceive you, the experience that you want to deliver. And I think more than anything else, that's what a brand is to me. So I'm just going to give you an example. For me, when I was selling, and I remember this when I used to sell with Gordy, I said to him, I want to create an experience with our listings. I want to create a custom experience with our listings. It needs to be, that is part of our brand, is that customization and that personalization where we make it about the client, not about ourselves. And we really bring them to the forefront rather than our faces and ourselves. And that was one of our values, right? That's something that we both, collaboratively believed in, and that's something we wanted to represent. So the first step for us was to create that experience, to understand that that's what our value is. And that's how we create the experience. So everything, the marketing that we put forth, the efforts that we put forth, the way that the look and feel of our material, and it goes way beyond, so that when people go into one of our listings or even drive past one of our listings, they know it's, oh, that's their listing. Oh, that's them. So that people start to recognize you through the experience that you're delivering. And that's the perception that you want to create. So
that's in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yeah.
So it's the feeling you want them to have when they think of you, when they see any of your marketing, when they see a listing that's yours. You want them to have a specific feeling. And obviously, in order for that to happen, you as the real estate agent have to figure out what that feeling is that you want them to receive.
Or what that perception is, even like, what is that perception that you want them to have when they think of you? What is it that you want them to think of alongside of that? Like, what are your values? What is it that you're trying to communicate and deliver? And I think that it goes, there's a lot of inward reflection required to this process, which is the first step that you have to take.
And I definitely agree, because I know usually when I speak to a lot of the agents and I say to them, what's important or what differentiates you from the rest of the realtors, honestly, I get two answers. One is my marketing, and two is I'm a good negotiator. So we do have to think a little bit more in depth on the process when you're thinking of what your message is, because those two are typical.
And you brought up a very good point here. Not only are they typical, but it's also a given. It's like when you purchase a product and it says this is what it's supposed to do, you expect it to do that. And that doesn't make the product memorable. Mm-hmm. What makes a product or a service memorable is how you exceed somebody's expectations, or how you do something that's a little bit different or on top of what their regular expectations are of you. It's creating that experience, like I said, that makes you memorable, because the only way the word of your brand will start to come back to you. You're going to get because of who you are, is because they remember you, right? And it's not a fridge magnet that's going to make them remember you. It's the experience that they had with you and how you made them feel. So, and this is a really important conversation, is it's a given in such a competitive market space that you're going to get them a house, you're going to negotiate for them, and you're going to get them the best deal. Like, that's kind of your job, right? So, but how do you go the extra mile? And that's where a lot of agents are, and I'm not like pointing any fingers, but most agents are lazy in that regard because they get complacent. They become complacent because, like, yeah, I'm doing all right. You know, I don't really need to go the extra mile. I'm doing okay, especially the ones that are doing okay. They don't really bother with it. But you have to start with the whole branding, like branding in mind, where what's my long-term goal in this business? It's not just I want to do some deals and be okay and be comfortable. It's like, what's your long-term game? Like, if you're building a business that you eventually want to work for you, and where you eventually want to have like efficiency and, recognition and all of those things. Recognition, what am I doing? Making up words. Recognition. And if you want to do all of those things, I think it's really important to have, not just a 1 year, 5 year business plan, but like, where is this business going in a decade from now, 15, 20 years from now? Like, you still want it to exist. So, ask yourself as well, what is my long-term game here? Like, am I going to stay an individual agent? Do I eventually want to grow a team? Because all of that will play a role in how you position your branding.
So everybody, you have homework tonight. Figure out where you want to go in the business long-term, and then figure out what you do to differentiate yourself, or how you go the extra mile, as Kiran put it.
And it's really interesting. I don't know where I read this or had this, but because I consume so much content, but someone said that there's an agent who apparently so a part of his like brand experience is, again, like that, making your consumers feel really special, making people feel really special. So he would ask in conversation, people, oh, what's your favorite beverage? What kind of music do you like listening to? So kind of just getting to know them. And then when they came to the office, that's the beverage he would serve. That's the music that would be playing in the background. So that instantly from the get-go is like, it's such a small thing, but he's creating that's part of his brand. That's part of his expression of his brand, is that personalized experience, and it's making people feel super special and
absolutely
remember him.
Important and different, and they'll remember you, because that is a great way for you to really connect with them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go into some of the questions that I have received. The starting, you specified that you need to figure out branding for your personal and your business. So how are those different? And what advice can you give to our audience on how to figure out how to do both? Is that a loaded question?
Yeah, it's a broad question, but we'll get into it, because I think we'll cover a few things with that question. And it's, like I said, one of the most commonly asked questions, like I mentioned at the beginning. So you really have to ask yourself what you're more comfortable with. So if some people are more introverted, some people are more extroverted, some people want to create a brand because they feel like, I'll give you an example. I'm working with a client of mine right now, and we created her branding strategy. So her strategy, she was joining a team that her mom had established a personal brand in the area. So she was now joining in that team, right? So it was almost like, do we now shift to a business brand, or do we keep her personal brand? Because people know her by her name. People know her by her face. So you really have to ask yourself where you're at in the business. Like, do people know you by who you are? If they do, if your face, if your name is who they associate your brand and your business with, then you should leverage that. Absolutely, you should leverage that. And I think there's no right or wrong answer here. It really just depends on your business and where you're at with your business and where you want to go with your business, right? If you say to yourself, okay, long term, yes, right now it's me and my face, but long term, I want to just be a representative of my business brand, and I want to add other people into it, and I want to grow a team, then you have to transition towards that from a personal brand to a business brand, where you have a business name or a team name. And then you slowly, start to bring other representatives to the forefront.
So let's say you have a newer real estate agent or someone who's not completely dominant in their market. What suggestion would you give them for their branding if they've never really branded themselves or their business?
It's a tricky one, but I think at the beginning, one of the best things to do is to really leverage also the brokerage that you're with and the brand that you're associated with, because they've built up trust in the marketplace already. So I think there is nothing wrong with leveraging that, especially as a new agent, and then tying in your personal identity into it and your personal differentiating factor into it. So you kind of almost blend in with that. So, Remax, for example, or Royal LePage, or whatever brokerage you're with, they've all brokerages or all major brands have already built some form of trust with consumers. So leveraging some of that and looking at what does my brokerage represent and how do I differentiate myself, and then tying those in together at the beginning is what I did too. And it worked, because at the beginning I didn't have a track record. I didn't have credibility. I didn't have a lot. But my brokerage did. The brand I was associated with did. So piggybacking off of that a little bit there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. I mean, what do you think about that? Because I know you were dealing with that too.
No, I definitely agree with what you're saying. It's hard, especially for those who don't have a market share at all. And especially if you do have a franchise, it does make the most sense to go off of that, but also giving yourself the space to show who you are. And it could be the look and feel of certain marketing pieces that you have. That was one of the big things where the brokerage I was at, there was, I don't know, almost 500 agents as part of the brokerage, and trying to create marketing materials for each person so it was reflective of their personality and where they stood. It was very difficult, but we definitely got it done, because I don't want everybody to look the same, because to me, you're not.
But one of the things which is really important to remember in branding, and this is a mistake a lot of people made, including myself, is they, just like I said, the first thing, they look inward. Yes, that's important, but your brand should have an element of your personality, but also an element of resonating with the audience that you want to resonate with, and what will speak to them. Some agents completely just skip that and just make their brand reflective 100% of who they are. I think that's a major part. Maybe half of it is what that is, but a huge component of it is also, who are you speaking to? What type of, where are those people at in their life? Like, what type of demographic are we speaking to? What type of age group are we speaking to? And then that's going to help you with the visual representation, because then you can choose your fonts, choose your colors, because there's a whole lot of psychology that goes into that as well. And, really carefully kind of put together the design element of it. But one aspect of it is you, but another aspect of it is, who do you want to speak to and what resonates with them?
So one question I was always asked when I was at the Remax brokerage is, if I am taking a part of my personality, I have thought about my target market. When I brand, am I making sure, so colors, fonts, what have you, am I going in line with what's reflected of my audience, or am I using the company franchise branding that I have?
There's a right or wrong answer to that. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to that. I think that it's personal preference. But to me, if your company branding is not in line with the work that we just said to do, then by all means, create your own, come up with your own color scheme. I think that's totally okay to do. We did that as well, and I did that. I still do it, and I still recommend to my clients to do it, because let's just say you work with, let's just say you work with Remax or whatever brokerage, or Home Life, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, you're defining yourself and you want to kind of niche out and carve out a niche to work with single moms. I don't know, that's maybe your niche and you want to develop a brand around that. Maybe the company brand colors and fonts and styles, the visual representation of it won't align with that. So in that instance, you will come up with your own.
And for me, I'll also say I'm a more of a little logical thinker. So I also think it's good if you brand slightly differently than your franchise, because you may not always be with that particular franchise. You might grow, you might have different needs, and you might have to go somewhere else. So to me, yes, and the starting piggyback off of what they're doing, but really try to make sure the brand is reflective of you and it's something that you can take wherever you may go.
100%. And that's a mistake when people make is, like they add their brokerage or brand name with their email addresses or with their websites and with their branding. And I'm just like, don't do that, because you don't know where you're going to be in the future. So while I think at the beginning it definitely helps, especially for a new agent to, like I said, integrate some of your brand's credibility and, integrate that with your own personal brand. But, and one thing to know is, and this is something that a lot of agents think is like it's the be all and end all. Like if I come up with something now, I can never change it. That's not true. You can always evolve your branding. Your visual representation can always evolve. You can improve things. You can change things, because as a new agent, sometimes you're not clear of, and you will establish your brand by reflecting on the business you've done. So sometimes what you have to do is just kind of look at, okay, who have been my customers that have actually paid me? Like, who have been the people that have actually made me money? What are the commonalities between those people? And once you start doing that research, you'll start to see, okay, they're all kind of in this age range. They're all kind of in this stage of their life, and these are their interests, and this is what, right? You'll see that, and you can carve, and then naturally that means you're attracting that kind of clientele. So your branding will evolve towards that as you progress in your business. And I think that's really, really important.
Makes sense to me. So one other thing I was actually asked by one of my team members is, what are the mistakes that you see that realtors are making with their branding?
Just not being creative enough, and also not doing the actual preliminary work, which is the strategy piece. Like I said, skipping the strategy piece and going right to the visual representation, and right away, just let's create a logo. Like a typical real estate agent will say, branding, let's create a logo. Like it doesn't even, there is no homework involved, not unless you're working with somebody who's a brand strategist or somebody who knows about branding, which is, I think, a conversation that you should always have with somebody who knows enough about it or has done it enough times to understand what's involved and what's entailed. Because the problem is, if you're just skipping right to the brand identity piece and you haven't done the homework and you haven't asked yourself enough questions, and then you're not going to believe in your brand. If you're not convinced of your own brand and the values and what you stand for, what it represents, who it speaks to, then you're not going to communicate it effectively and with the amount of confidence that you should, because you yourself are not convinced of it. So I know, for instance, a team that I worked with, we developed their branding, and they honesty, integrity, like honesty and transparency were some of the things that, again, it's a very common personal value that a lot of people will say, but they insisted on communicating it visually as well as a tagline. So we did, because they believed that their audience, because they worked with more of like a senior segment, would benefit from visually seeing those words as a tagline. And they made sure that they said, remember how we promised you this is a promise that we made to you guys, and we delivered on it. And people would look at their branding, their visual representation, and their taglines and relate that to the experience that they had with them, and the two aligned. When you're just creating a logo, there is a huge piece missing. So do that homework, like we said. And I think that's the most common mistake that people make, is to do, is to go right away to the logo creation. And I think another thing is they don't communicate their brand consistently. Like they don't represent.
Expansion on that.
So what I mean by that is, you have your logo, colors, fonts, images, etc., but they don't really integrate their brand across all channels.
Okay.
When they meet people, and your brand is also how you carry yourself, the message, the tone of your, the tone of your voice, the way you speak, the way you communicate, the content you create on social media, like across all channels, it should all align. And a lot of people just don't bother with that.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you an example. For instance, for me, when I was creating this brand now for me in my coaching business, now I had to go through the same process, right? So I had to go and ask myself, and it's always harder to create your own stuff.
Mhm.
Like, you know about it, you've done it, but it's always so hard because we keep doubting ourselves, like, are we doing it right? Maybe we're not doing it right, you know. But one of the things that kept coming to the surface for me was the word empowerment, because that's one of my values. This is what we started with, is empowerment, right? So my entire messaging, all the content I create, all the videos I produce, when I work with clients one-on-one, when I go out there and teach, whether I'm doing a webinar, whatever the case may be, that word empowerment, it bleeds through everything I do and everything I create. So that's really, really important.
So for realtors who having honesty, integrity, maybe it's good communication, anything that you're doing on social media should reflect those key values that you have for your business. Because
100%.
you're having it on your tagline or your website is not enough.
No, I don't even think it's necessary sometimes to have it on your tagline, if I'm honest with you, because I think it's something people should experience and draw the conclusion themselves, because through the experience that they've had with you.
Definitely. So even, I guess, blog posts that you're doing should speak to that. And one of the things, I was actually discussing this branding with my partners last week, and one of the ways that they figured out what their message was by actually going through testimonials from their clients, and they were seeing the same keywords showing up, and that was what their clientele was experiencing. So
Mm-hmm.
whether they knew they were doing it or not, it was there. So for those of you who are unsure as to what type of experience you want to present to your target market, have a look at some of your testimonials and what your clients are actually saying about you.
So true. And it's so important as well to do that, because oftentimes, I mean, this is why people journal, for instance, right? Like, let's just go back to like a basic example. When you journal, you can reflect back on your life experiences and identify what some of the trends are and what some of the patterns are. So it's really important to recognize those patterns and understand where your opportunity in the marketplace really lies, because you're creating that without even realizing. So even now for me in my business, since I've started the coaching business, it's like, okay, there's a lot of younger women that are drawn to me and my style and everything, and that's happening organically. So you sometimes define your target audience through experience and through walking through, through doing a little bit of work, and that's totally okay as well, because that's organically happening.
So let's say you've gone ahead, you've thought about who your target market is, you've thought about what differentiates where your value is. What steps does that realtor take next for branding?
So once you've done the homework and you've identified it, and then that's when you can really move on to, the language, the tone, the look, the feel. That's where you can really start going about with, the fun part of creating the branding, which is the actual logo, which is the actual colors that you're going to use. I mean, and a lot of that is going to be reflective of your target audience. So if your target audience, you've decided is, it's, they speak simple language. It's not, you could really, they're younger. Then you can, okay, I want to have more colloquial language. I want to have a really simple, edgy, modern style in my logo. Like, you can then start integrating and putting those things together and coming up with a visual representation for your brand, like a color scheme. And you can do this on your own, absolutely. Or you can work with somebody who's done this. Like I said, it's really good to run that by someone who is a brand strategist. But the one thing I would recommend is definitely, at the very least, if you're not going to work with a brand strategist, work with a graphic designer. Because that's where they come in. If you're not a graphic designer, don't start doing graphic design. And it's a mistake I made too, and I don't make that mistake anymore. Like, I help people with brand strategy, but I will absolutely not take on any visual work or graphic work, because that's their job, right? This is where you work with somebody who does that, and who can really well translate your vision
Did we lose?
Important is to work with the right people.
Now, do you
Sorry?
think that everybody should have a logo, that everyone should change maybe what their fonts are? Like, do you believe that that is definitely going to help them in their business, or do you just think that only if that's where they want to go?
I think it helps. I think it definitely helps everybody to differentiate yourself and to ask yourself those questions. Because, like I said, even if you don't go full on hardcore branding, you can still, by asking yourself even simple questions like, what are your core values in your business and your personal values, you'll just start to communicate those in the experience and delivering those on a day-to-day basis and carrying those with you. You're on your way towards building a more stronger brand. So I don't think, I do think everybody should think about this. I don't think this is really, yes, it's optional for those people who don't really care about being in the business as a full, for those people who aren't building a business, let's just put it this way. For those who aren't building a business, it's optional. But for those of you who are just transactional and just kind of coasting through, yeah, it's optional. But at the very least, if you're looking to create a business, then you should be asking yourself these questions for sure.
So let's say they've gone ahead, they've created their logo. Some other basic questions that we always get asked is always with the business card, right? Do I put my picture on? Do I not put my picture on? Does even the quality of the card affect somebody's perception? So what are your thoughts on that?
It's funny. Yes, that question gets asked all the time. It's a personal decision. I'm going to tell you what it is. So I decided when I was selling not to put my picture on marketing material.
Why?
We didn't do it because our brand value and the way that we communicated what we stood for was consumer in the front line. So that contradicts the value of the brand.
Yes.
So hence no. So that's a very simple answer to your question. If you're building a team and and the team is really, and the team name is really what you're known through, then no, because it's not your personal brand, it's a team brand, it's a business brand that you're building. So then again, no, the answer would be no. Your logo should be front and center because that's what people will look at and recognize and remember you through. Is it your picture that they're going to look at and remember your experience and your brand through, or is it your logo and your team branding that they're going to recognize you through? I think that's the question you have to ask yourself. There is no right or wrong here because it's case by case. Again, it depends on your target audience and who you're speaking to and what resonates with them and how they recognize you and how you want them to remember you. If you're building a personal brand, put your picture on there. I'm actually completely transitioning out of business cards in life in general.
Okay. Why is that? Let's hear.
I don't do it anymore. I don't know if this is even I don't know. It's just me personally. Even when I go to networking events, I don't take business cards anymore. I just connect with people on social media now. I just feel that that's where I'm displaying my brand the most to people where I can't reach them one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And I want to build my follower base. So if I'm meeting somebody at an event, or if I'm meeting somebody at a party, or if I'm connecting with somebody through, just an introduction for potential business, I would rather them connect with me on social media because that's where they'll get a brand experience. Like that's where they'll see what I'm about, who I'm about, because that's where I'm posting my content. So I just look at it as a great way for me to build better credibility and a better connection with people. So that's me. But yes, sometimes, in this business, you do need to give out cards. So one of the things we did, we did upgrade the quality of a card because you're tapping into their senses, right? If it's a nice kind of like matte velvety card, then if all they remember is feeling it, oh yeah, that's a really nice card, and then they're going to chuck it in the bin, that's something that they're going to remember, right? Whether it's worth it or not, I think it just depends on how much money you want to spend. But I think in this day and age, sometimes it is optional. I literally experimented this at a networking event where I went to a networking event without business cards, and I was let's see how successful I am here. So I just pulled out my phone. Shoot, I left my business cards in the car, and it's parked really far. But hey, are you on Facebook? Are you on Instagram? And I just connect with people on social media. And that way I built, I think, 10 or 12 connections through social media. And I think to myself, if I had handed out 12 business cards, would I have connected with all of those people on social media? I would have probably made the effort to go ahead and add them, but I don't know. Would they have done the same?
Right. And that's also a business networking event where it might be different when you're dealing with prospective clients. Are they going to go
100%.
there and seek you out?
I've actually done that with clients as well, where I've just connected with them on social media, because it's and it's just your positioning in a very light-hearted way. I think it's nice, and you can do both. You can give them a business card and be like, hey, by the way, I post a lot of really good stuff on social media. I post videos about that are relevant to you, the market. I put market updates there, community events, this, that, the other, that might be really interesting for you to keep on top of. So why don't we connect there as well?
Now, what do you think about a digital business card? So I've seen some where you have one card and then you can just kind of tap it on somebody's phone, your contact information gets sent, or there's a ring, which I did like. What do you think about those options, or do you still think social media is the better way?
You have to really ask yourself, I mean, it's a cool experience to do that. Tap, tap, wow, I got your contact information on my phone now. But what's that really going to trigger that person to do? Like, what's the purpose of that? At least if I add them on social media, the likelihood of them seeing my content while they're scrolling up and down their newsfeed is higher than them making a phone call. Like, I think it's a cool concept. I've never really bothered too much with it, if I'm honest with you, because I like to look at, where is my highest ROI in terms of, and in terms of like return on investment, the return being them connecting with me and building that relationship.
And you're finding right now, for you specifically in your target market, social media is the way to go.
My clients are doing it too. I've been recommending it to all of my clients. I'm like, just try it out. Trust me. Just go and start adding people. I've had people do it when they're door knocking. Like, I just had people do it while door knocking too. So it works. I think it just depends on if you position it in a very, I think if you position it in a light-hearted, casual kind of conversation, then you're just taking that relationship a step further. I think that's totally fine. And there is no more definition of professionalism, in my opinion, anymore either, right? Like, I mean, professionalism, yes, you can be suited and booted and bring out business cards and stuff like that. But if that's not who you are, and your brand needs to be authentic. And I think this is a very important conversation that we kind of skipped over a little bit, but your brand needs to be authentic. It's so important to be authentic. Absolutely. Because if you're not, then you're just staging. You're just putting on a show. Like, for me now, and this is something you have to own. You have to own who you are. You have to own your authenticity, and you have to be comfortable with that. And you have to be comfortable with, relaying that out to people, because that's how you will build lasting relationships. There is no how you're supposed to be anymore. It is who are you, And that's the reality.
Now, what would you say for people who are having issues or trouble coming up with who their target audience is, or what their core values are that they're trying to relate to their market? What advice would you give them to get them, started in the right direction?
I mean, it depends on what kind of issues you're having, but typically speaking, it starts with your personal values. Start there. If you're not able to identify how you want to relate, what your business values are yet, start with your personal values, because we're in a relationship business. We're in a people business, and this will always be that way. That's never going to change, no matter how much technology comes in and aids the business transaction process. It's never going to replace us. So we're going to always be in the relationship business, which means that there's always a personal element that is going to be a part of the consumer's experience, and that has to be you. So start there. Start there. Start asking yourself, okay, what's important to me? By asking yourself, By asking yourself and being the ideal client that you want to attract, you'll start to define that more and more. For instance, I don't want to work with people who don't value service, because I come from a very high service based perspective. So I wouldn't want to work with anybody, ideally, who doesn't value that, because guess what, that journey is going to be a problem with generic brands, right? That's the problem with generic brands that are kind of playing it safe, is that they're kind of just targeting the masses. And when
Yeah.
you do that, you run the risk of having to filter through a lot of bullshit clients that you don't want to work with. And that, and that's going to become a really, like, that's time consuming, and it's going to take a lot of energy out of you. Whereas if you communicate your brand properly, and one of the things that I really love to talk about when it comes to branding, because see, nothing is an isolated piece in this business, right? Branding isn't isolated from the rest of our business. Everything ties together. So when we look at the brand, we have to ask ourselves, okay, these are my values. I stand for service. I know that I'm delivering high quality service. I know these are the things I stand for, and this is what I pride myself in, and this is the experience that my consumers have, whether it's going through testimonials or kind of reflecting back at, if you're lazy and you're not taking testimonials, start doing it now. But if you're just, looking back at the people that you've worked with, you'll start to define that. Then you have to really stand very firm in that and not budge. That's really important. You can't have too much room for, oh, okay, well, I'll just do this for you because I'll make some money. No, I think the more you stand firm in your beliefs and your values, the more people are going to start taking you seriously. And this is an example that I gave at a couple of my training sessions recently. It's if your brand stands for a very organized, like if you want a very structured experience for your people, if you want to give them a very smooth, high communication, transparent experience, there's a lot of communication that's involved in there, right? If you're coming from an empowerment education standpoint in your brand and your belief system for your clients rather than a salesy one, then there's a lot of steps involved in that. So for me, when I'm selling, and I had a lead recently call me off realtor.ca being like, oh, I saw this listing. Are you the listing agent? I want to go see this property. So of course I went through the qualifying questions, to which she lied to all of my questions. But it's hard to tell that, especially if you're a new agent. I can see how you would just fall right into that trap. And so part of my, like I said, part of my experience for my clients that I strive for is that organized, education-based, empowerment-based experience. So I said, here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to send you a market report for the area, because I want you to know exactly what the stats and trends are in the area. In addition to it, I have a video that describes my role to you as your real estate agent, helping you purchase a property, because that's something I created back when I was selling. So I have that. And thirdly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you some other properties too, because I believe in making sure that you explore all your options. That's my job to you as your realtor for you. So I'm going to send you those in addition to, and after that, my assistant's going to reach out to you and is going to coordinate some times that work. You'll get a calendar invite, so you're reminded. See, this is all high service-based stuff.
Absolutely.
20 minutes later, she emails me saying her agent is actually out of town. She's going to wait until the open house to go see it. But thank you very much. So what did I do? I deterred her through this process by sticking to my guns, by sticking to my beliefs and my core values, which is, this is the experience I want to deliver.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And at the end of the day, some people might say, but why would you do that? You've lost a potential. But do you want to work with somebody who has an agent and is going behind their agent's back? You have to look at the clients that you want. And the more clients that you get that are like-minded, to me, for a realtor, you will have a more enjoyable experience in your real estate business.
That is so true. So true. And the more you do this, the more you'll recognize that work won't feel like work when you stick to your values, when you put everything through that values filter, every decision through that values filter, every client through that values filter, every yes or no that you say through that, you're gonna feel like you're gonna love what you're doing. Otherwise, you're gonna start hating it. You're going to start questioning life. You're going to be like, what am I doing? This is such a shitty business. People are so shitty. You're going to lose faith in humanity. I've been through that, right? So you gotta really feel, you gotta get comfortable with saying, no, this doesn't align with my core values, with who I stand for, what I stand for, and what I want to stand for. And there is abundance within that if you stick to it. So you will attract more of that if you stick to that, because I'm a big believer in energy. I don't think it's a question about believing. It's just a question about how much you apply it, really, because the more I do that, the more I just feel that the right people are just drawn to me. The people who align with my values are just drawn to me. The more I choose to focus my energy on the right people, because I have the odd people here and there who are time wasters, who, who are pain to work with, and who just want to challenge me or ask for discounts, ask for this, ask for that. And I just don't pay attention to that. I'm just like, no. There are other people who will do that. And you can have, you can you can find people like you. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to work with. So it's a beautiful thing once you start putting and focusing your energy on that.
So create your brand, create your core values for that brand, and stick by them.
100%.
Otherwise, your message is going to get diluted or get lost along the way.
Very true.
So we do have a question. Previously, we're talking about a generic brand. So somebody wants to know, can you give more examples or details on what you believe is a generic brand?
A GTA expert.
What's a GTA expert?
What is that even? How do GTA and expert go together in one sentence? I don't know. But yeah, I specialize in selling, buying, investing, sending you to the moon, finding your property on Mars, like all of that. I specialize in that. It doesn't exist, right? So I think that's what I mean by generic brand, is playing it safe by, and a lot of newer agents make that mistake more so than, more seasoned agents who understand that there is less competition in a niche. There is less competition when you kind of focus down and home in on like one area or one segment of the market. Because what if, so
you're trying to get as many people as possible, might be interested in what they're doing, but it goes back to if you're a jack of all trades, you're a master of none.
And consumers have changed when it comes to that. See, it's all about custom experiences now. People, and I'll give you an example. So I've been speaking for the OREA conferences now, like last year was the third year in a row. So every year OREA goes across Ontario and they host conferences, and I've had the privilege to speak 3 years in a row at like 6 to 7 places each time. Every time they do what's called a consumer panel. So they ask consumers, there's 5 consumers that come on stage, and they ask them, they ask them a bunch of questions, but one of the questions is always, what's more important to you? The company that they work with, or their experience within what you need, like specifically with your area or your segment. And that has hands down always been what people value the most, is, that customized experience, that, specialism is really important to people.
Oh, definitely.
Because then your language resonates with them too, right? Because if you ask somebody, hey, you know what, if you live in this area, or if you're this segment, you can start to understand their pain points better. You can start to study your target audience and do market research. And then your languaging of your marketing, your advertising, the way you speak to people is all going to resonate with them. They're going to feel like you're speaking their mind, and they're going to love that, right? That's instant credibility right there.
So guys, you really, really need to take the time, figure out what your message is before you start worrying about a logo, what your business card, what your website, what your flyers look like, because you do want to to me, I think it's great to be the professional that all realtors say that they are, and take this business seriously. Right? It's
100%.
your business. Take it seriously and make sure that you know what your core values are. That way you can very easily communicate it to those that are using your services.
Very true. That's very true. And then I know we have a little bit of time. So one of the things that's, I get asked about a lot is how do we translate that visual brand into our marketing materials and stuff. So one tool that I really like to use that I recommend to everybody is a tool called Canva. I don't know if you probably know it, use it, love it. But one of the things that, for instance, I do is when we create the branding packages for people after the brand strategy and logo are done, is we give them a bunch of you can create that yourself too if you have the time, is to create a bunch of branded templates. Because once you've created that visual side of your brand, it's very important that it's consistent, that cover page, or whether it's a market update you're putting out there, whether it's a flyer, whether it's just a social media post, like whatever it is, or brochure for your property, for sales sign, everything, they all should be cohesive visually and look consistent, so that people can start visually also connecting the dots and seeing you on a consistent basis in that way.
So for example, let's say somebody's doing a market update, make sure visually coloring, it always looks the same. If they're doing, let's say, a social media post on maybe an event that they're having, make sure again, it all looks the same. Don't change up the colors because one might look prettier in a different, make sure it's always.
Yeah, always consistent, because that's how you're going to reinforce the visual aspect of your brand. It's really, really important. And I personally believe the simpler it looks visually, the better. Sometimes there is no need to overcomplicate it. But like I said, there is a whole lot of psychology behind the colors that you choose, the fonts that you choose and stuff like that. That will depend a lot on the research that you do in terms of, the preliminary work in terms of strategy. But, you should choose. It's more important that you choose the visual representation according to that than your personal kind of likes, because that's where the experience comes in. But yeah, it's really important to bear that in mind, what's going to resonate with people, and how, for instance, the color green has a positive kind of, take action, go ahead, that kind of a representation to it. Red may not be for you. A lot of agents pick blue and green because they're more, for real estate, they work really well. So, but again, it depends. It depends entirely. I'm not saying there's any right or wrong here.
But you just want to make sure the colors that you're choosing go in line with what your values are.
100%. And your target audience's preference, or what's going to resonate with them. That's super key. And then, yeah, using a tool like Canva. So making sure that, and this is a tip I'll give to everybody, is, if you're getting branded templates, or if you're creating your own templates, make sure they're in an editable format, which is why I love Canva so much, because then you can take it and replicate it. You can take it and edit it. Like if you have, for instance, a property brochure, you want to make sure that every listing you have, it's the same. If you have a style of for sale sign, have it be the same. If your social media posts, everything, have it all be the same. It's really important. If you're creating video intros, outros, make sure they're always the same, because it gives people, and sometimes it's not just the intro, outro from a visual perspective. If you're doing a lot of videos, it could just be the first line that you say, the first sentence that you say could be like a tagline or something of yours that's always consistent. But that consistency is so, so important.
Do you believe that agents should have taglines?
I think there's absolutely, why not? I think it's okay to have taglines, or even keywords in lieu of taglines is good. But if you have a tagline, it comes with a lot of responsibility. Sometimes it's better not to have a tagline. And if you have one, you got to make sure that it is, you deliver upon that. Like, you can claim and shout out to the world, like it's optional, but you can claim and shout out, I am so this, that, the other. And then if your experience is contradictory to that, then you've just screwed yourself over for no reason. May as well not have the
tagline at all.
Yeah.
Perfect. So someone's had to leave, but they said they've definitely picked up a few nuggets.
That's amazing.
We've got a couple more minutes left, so I'll just say if anyone does have questions you want to ask Kiran specifically, please use the chat box now. Again, I have recorded the session, and everyone who has attended, I will be sending you out a copy, so you can always go back if you need a refresher on anything that she's gone over today.
I see somebody here actually said, and that's Megan. I love how you're saying authentic. I have a colleague, which is, honestly, you should dress according to how you feel comfortable and what reflects your personality. I have done, I've gone down showings in a baseball hat and in like sneakers. It doesn't matter because, like I said, there is no real definition of what's professional, really. People are less judgy, thank God. And, you know, we're evolving as a human race to be less judgmental. And by, you know, looking at you, like people can, I'm not going to say people haven't passed judgments on me. I mean, I'm female, I'm younger, I'm of color. Like there's people that have come up to me and looked at me visually and how I look. And there's people that have said, oh, your hair is too long. This is your dress is like, don't give a shit. This is who I am. This authentically, how I dress, how I carry myself, how I speak. I throw in the occasional, you know, swear word here and there. And if you're offended by that, then you and I are definitely not going to vibe because that's not authentic to me. And I can change that, but I just don't think it's worth it. Not to me. So go ahead, wear your jeans and heels. I love that too. That's a really cute look, Megan. So go for it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Be comfortable, right? You don't want to be dressing that's in a way that's not authentic to you, because that I think will actually show through that you're not confident, because you're probably going to be standing different, talking different. You're going to be worried about how they're perceiving you, where if you were just genuinely dressed in your authentic clothing style, that would be the least of your concerns.
100%. And this is why it's so important that you reflect that in your brand identity. I have a client of mine who we worked with on branding. Every single time I saw him, he would be wearing, like, he'd be really sharply dressed, like polished shoes, and that's who he is though. That's not, he didn't just do that for our meetings, like that is who he is. That's how he likes to dress. And then he had a logo that had like yellow and bright green, neon green. I'm like, these two don't align. There is a huge, like, there is no alignment here. So let's go back. Let's figure out what, like, let's dig deep and let's kind of make sure it all aligns. Because when I see you, when I see your logo, I'm like, no, this doesn't make sense.
So with that being said, I'm assuming with your consulting business, if there are agents who are having difficulty coming up with that strategy for their branding, are you there to help? I know you don't visually do it, but are you there to help them with those needs?
I am, absolutely. So I actually work with a graphic designer because I don't even want to touch that piece. Like I can give advice on it, but I would rather leave it to the professionals. So absolutely, we're actually, you know, we're happy to do complimentary consultations for anybody who's on this call. If you want to have just a quick chat with myself for 15 minutes, you can go to agentconsulting.ca/branding. You can just fill out that form and we'll reach out to you. But it's just for a quick chit chat just to see if you have any questions following up from this, or if there's anything I can help you with. Absolutely, I'd be more than happy to. If there is a mutual fit, 100%. And again, that's another line I say, mutual fit. Let me tell you guys why. Because like I said, one of the things I pride myself for in my business is that I don't just work with everybody. I want to work with people whose values I align with. So when I say mutual fit, it's subconsciously, psychologically, for people, it's like, oh, okay, she's not just desperate for business. It's more of a, we're going to chat and see if it makes sense.
Yep.
And
so
immediately respect level goes up. And so these little things. Yeah.
That reminds me of something Tarek used to talk about with you're interviewing me to be the position of your purchase or your sale. But at the same token, I'm interviewing you to see if you're a good fit for who I represent.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, Tarek's taught us so much, right? So for sure, that's really, really important, I think, because that's you raising your own standards. And I made this joke yesterday at a session I was at. I was like, it's like dating, right? Like if you just kind of go out there on a desperate kind of streak, it's like, oh, you know, work with anybody or I'll date anybody type of thing. If you got to raise your standards and you got to believe that you're worthy of working with the right people as well. Like, you know, super important.
Oh, definitely. And I know for some people, especially if you're a little bit newer, if you're having a slower time and a dip in that business, those are going to be the times where you're really going to have to test yourself and see if you're going to stick to your guns and stick to the values that you have for yourself.
100%.
All right. Well, this was a great session. Thank you so much for doing this with me, Kiran. I think we have all learned a lot. There's definitely quite a bit of golden nuggets I am taking away for myself.
Thank you. And same here. Like I love speaking with you, Rhea, someone I always look up to in the
Oh, it's great.
industry and love so much. So thank you for having me. I appreciate that so much.
No problem. So guys, again, if you guys need to get a hold of Karen, it's agentconsulting.ca
Forward
slash.
slash branding. Yeah.
Perfect. So I look forward to hearing from all of you. I will be emailing you a copy of today's session along with some homework because everyone knows I love giving homework out and just some things for you guys to think about and take away to make your branding that much better in the future.
Yeah. Can I add one thing to that before we go? Because I keep thinking of things. So one of the things that I learned recently that I want to share with you guys is whenever we attend training sessions, we come away with a bunch of notes, and it's a good thing that you're giving them homework because you're doing the work for them. But in the future, if they don't have you and they're attending other training sessions, one thing that I was recently made to do was create two columns, one that says now, one that says later, because usually when we have too many items on our to-do list, then it gets overwhelming and realistically we don't always have time to do everything. So kind of assess out of those pieces what's more pressing and what's immediately going to help you and put those in your now column. And that could be 1 to 3 items at the most, no more than that. It could be one, that's okay, and the rest of them pop them in the later column, because that way you can prioritize and you're more likely to actually get things done. I found that true to be for myself.
Absolutely. Learning is great. Training is great, but you have to implement what you've learned.
100%.
So that's where I'll come in. I'll definitely be following up with everyone who's been attending our session today. So thank you so much, Karen. And hopefully we'll do this again.
For sure. I'd be happy to.
Perfect. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.